years ago, I started my own communications consulting firm, Rob Johnson Communications. I know, very clever. And I, as one of my many things that I do, I've been on the Tony P's team for a couple of years now as their strategic advisor. And when events like this come up, I have just enough experience that they say, would you lead a panel discussion? So I really enjoy that we're doing this. If you've all been to Tony P's events, and I know many of you have, if some of you have become members, we appreciate that. We're trying to give everybody a little something different. It's in the cannabis space, blockchain, regular networking, these panel discussions. They all bring value, I think, to people that show up, and I hope you get a chance to meet some interesting people along the way. Since we have one microphone, we're gonna have to, it's not gonna be clunky, but we're gonna have to share the mic tonight. But, so that's my intro, but what I wanna do right now is let everybody here on the panel give about 30-second intros to themselves, and then we'll get going on the panel discussion. And what we're going to do is dive into some of the general issues to kind of get everybody on board, to make sure that everybody understands cryptocurrency vis-a-vis blockchain. We're going to get into more specific discussions, and then toward the end, any of you have questions, I would love to hear, we would all love to hear what you have to say. So we'll be doing some questions from the audience as well to make sure that we're talking about the issues that you want to talk about. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to Dana Schwartz, Blockchain Barbie.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here tonight. My name is Dana, otherwise known as the Blockchain Barbie, I think for pretty obvious reasons. I've been in the blockchain space for about 8 years now. Kind of started off in the fashion industry and wanted to bring education and research to mostly millennial and Gen Z females, you know, trying to spice up the industry a little bit, get the everyday common girl interested in it. Blockchain Barbie came to be because I'm blonde, I wear pink every day, and was often called a Barbie doll growing up, but decided to take that and run with it in the opposite direction. You know, Barbie's had every career in the book, so why can't she be in the blockchain space?
Hello, my name is nianticulera. I've been in the blockchain space for 4 years. I retired at 23, and basically I grew up in the south side of Chicago, and I believe that there's a little bit, some flaws in the system, we'll say it that way. And there's a lot of people that they work too hard. So I think it's time to work smarter instead of harder, and I want to bring cryptocurrencies or just financial markets, different ways of making money to your everyday household.
I want to make sure that we clap after all you guys. It's just so solid. My name is Rafael Moyden. I grew up in the suburbs here in Chicago, and I've been in blockchain since 2015, more as a philosopher. I kind of look at it as something that's going to seriously disrupt the system in the way that we had hoped that the internet was going to do in the first place, rather than empowering people and making certain people nearly trillionaires. There's a lot of people who've been marginalized in, pick a country, it doesn't matter, whether it's education, finance. I always talk about there's about 65 industries in which we've decided that blockchain is going to impact and make a massive paradigm shift for nearly everyone who's alive today. I have a 2-year-old, and the way it looks is the current trajectory needs fixing, and I don't have a plan B unless we can distribute what is education, infrastructure, cryptocurrency, financial. These are problems we can solve because the old reasons why we couldn't are irrelevant now that we have a way to trust immunize transactions. And so I approach it from a policy perspective. I'm part of the Government Blockchain Association, so I work in DC with legislators, Gary Gensler, Tom Emmer, because we need clarification. And so my thought is if we can do VC and conscious capitalism, and then distribute that across any vertical, that's what's going to matter. So that's why I'm here.
So what I'd like to do right now, because I know there are various folks in the room, some people are very well versed on blockchain and cryptocurrency and things of that nature. Others are still a little bit like, what is this exactly? So this isn't going to be a blockchain 101 discussion, but we are going to start 101 just to make sure that everybody in the room understands the basic principles of cryptocurrency and how it relates to blockchain, just so we can have the same conversation as we move forward. So, Dana, let me ask you in a basic way, and as we go down the line here, kind of explain to everybody what cryptocurrency is, how it differs from regular currency, and how cryptocurrency relates to blockchain. I know that's 2 or 3 different questions, but I think that will really help everybody understand the basic principles.
Yeah, sure. So cryptocurrencies are just their digital assets, and they are built on top of the blockchain. So kind of think of it like email was the first application of the internet, you know? So that's sort of what cryptocurrency is, and since it's digital, you don't have actual coins, you don't go to the bank like you would if you needed a dollar bill or anything like that. It's completely online, and it works with a blockchain, which is a distributed, shared, transparent ledger. You know, it's completely secure. Once it's on there, you can't change it. And it's made up of a bunch of different blocks that record your transactions. So think of a block just like a Lego. A singular Lego doesn't really do much for you, but if you add enough Legos together, you suddenly have a castle.
We're gonna add to that. That was amazing. That was perfect. I couldn't have said it better myself. It's transparent. It's permissionless. It's supposed to be decentralized, right? Like all transactions are on there, so you can't take it away. You can't. There's no funny business in there. You can't just counterfeit a transaction on the blockchain. To me, it's the most perfect network using the internet, which is, you know, digital. We're in the digital era, so we're on top of it. We're in this transition going from fiat, which has its own problems, and now with blockchain, we're solving those problems.
Ditto? That's probably just easiest. Blockchain is very interesting because in the same way as reality, you cannot go backwards. You can only reference a memory. So as things are created in one direction, you have trust there because it tells a story. Blockchain is able to do that in a way that we didn't have access to in the past. There are people who could affect change, whether it's through money or policy or simply greed. What we can do now is we can incentivize behavior in the right direction. So rather than sort of a neoclassical economics where we look at the data and see what happened and then we extrapolate backwards, with token-based economies, we can take behaviors that we're looking for and incentivize for them. When you can do that, you can change behavior in a way that we've never been able to do in history. We can now do transactions in any way, shape, or form, whether that's via data, dollars, research, pharmaceuticals. All of that can be done now in a way that benefits humanity, otherwise it gets really expensive. I always say that my goal is to make it expensive to be an asshole in the future. Blockchain does that, because we can now trace and track where things are being sent, as long as there's both, you know, permission and permissionless. There's need for privacy in things like IP, banking, healthcare. We have to still be able to protect data, so it can't all be open to everyone. But what we do is we give people digital sovereignty. When you can own the data that you create and you lease to Facebook for nothing, when you lease it to Instagram and they make billions of dollars, you can now own the images that you put on to the chain, which means you can choose who gets to use and benefit from those things. When you add a new value class, the trillions that we have, 47 trillion on the planet, will become 150 trillion within the next 10 years. When that money is distributed pre-distribution, not redistribution, by allowing people to combine their concepts, their art, their music, their creativity, marketing, advertising, all of these things, and you can benefit from that, everyone's job changes because you can work more effectively and be remunerated in a way that moves with the speed of the technology that we're surrounded by.
I'm so glad everybody's getting clapped for as we pass the microphone down. I want to ask you, Nancy, and prior to this event, I was able to have conversations with everybody here just so we knew where we wanted to go and what we wanted to talk about. It was very useful for me. But before we dive into the business applications for blockchain, which is why I know a lot of people are here today, and a little bit later, we're going to ask people around the room what industry you're in, and then we're going to start talking about the applications that would be useful for you. Say you're in legal, or you're in healthcare, or you're in insurance, whatever the case may be. So we're going to get to that. But Nancy, I'd like to ask you, for individuals who are still thinking, like, how do I get in here? Like, how do I cryptocurrency, before we get to the blockchain, cryptocurrency, how do I get into it, and how does it work precisely?
Okay, beautiful. So I think when people think about cryptocurrencies, they think about traditional investing, right? Very similar to the New York Stock Exchange, where you find a company or project like that you see upsell potential, and then you make an investment in there, and then that has potential for upsell side, right? So that's one way of getting involved in the blockchain or cryptocurrencies. You can do traditional investing. Number two, you can do what's called leverage trading, right? If anyone here, I know some people here do the foreign exchange market where you can buy on the way up, you can sell on the way down. That's called leverage trading, and that way you're also not afraid of the market going down, right? Because the market is going to fluctuate. The dollar isn't worth the same amount that it was worth, 10 years ago. It's not going to be worth the same amount in 10 years from now. So it's going to fluctuate. We can take advantage of that. We can profit off of that. We have nodes. We have mining, right? The creation of these cryptocurrencies. These are all ways that you can get involved and dive deeper into these. These are just like subcategories. We have NFTs, which I know we're going to talk about. I'm really excited about that. We have, Web3, the metaverse. There's digital land now. There's a list, a profound list of ways that you can get into them, and I feel like each one of those we can do an entire seminar. So I won't go too much in depth, but basically the easiest way to get involved is to fund an exchange, to convert your USD to some kind of cryptocurrency, whether it be one of the majors, BTC or Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, whatever the case may be, and then watch the fluctuation in price, right? Because I think holding on, and this is of course my personal opinion, holding on to USD, it's not really doing much for us. I think the interest that our bank is allegedly giving us isn't even beating inflation. So I'm all about assets. I'm a maximalist when it comes to the blockchain. I appreciate it so much, and it appreciates me. It appreciates for me. But yeah, that's a list of I don't know, like 6-8 ways that you can get involved with the blockchain.
Rafael.
I just love hearing from different people on the way in which we can all approach this. Some people look at it as a way to invest. Some people look at it as a way to provide for the 1.5 billion people on the planet that are considered unbanked. We had a conversation earlier about Latino, and one of the things is that people have been marginalized in every country for whatever reason. Skin color, where you were born, zip code in the US can decide what your life expectancy is. We can change some of those things. Blockchain is interesting because you need trust to do anything, right? I need to know that, I always say trust is the assumption of mutual integrity. And blockchain can guarantee that because we've solved what's called the double spend problem, right? If you give somebody a 20, you were down 20, they're up 20. Okay, we can verify that. You saw it, it happened. Tony, I gave you 20 bucks, but I don't carry cash. Welcome to the world. When you can verify that money is traded without an intermediary, if you buy a cup of coffee at Starbucks and you give them your $9 for an espresso, which is affordable because we've quantitatively eased the dollar back, so it actually only costs about $8.10. If you do that, there's 5 steps before that money comes out of your account and goes back into theirs. Every one of those people along the way takes what I call rent. There's the credit card processor, there's the merchant bank, there's your bank. We can speed all of that. Previously, these larger industries, right, the people who told us what trust was and said, hey, we'll make sure that your debit card doesn't bounce, right? We were all in college and you swiped your debit card like it was like a gift card and you're like, I don't know what's on it, but it might work, okay? That's because banks communicate, but it's very slow. When we can do this almost instantaneously for money, it changes the game, right? You don't need all of these people in the middle to spend billions of dollars on infrastructure and server rooms and data centers because we can have the compute power be on the edge, right? My wallet to your wallet. We can do transactions in the same way that we used to be able to when humanity lived in communities. I don't know if people are familiar, the Dunbar number is 150. So after you get over 150, you can't barter anymore. You can't trade chickens for a house, right? It's very hard to do. I work in Ukraine right now and they're having to trade real goods for natural value. When you can do that in a way that you don't have to trust the person because you know that everything about the transaction is verifying that trust for you, I can communicate with people and work with people because I can verify who they are because of KYC or some of the ways that you can do. People always talk about, Bitcoin. That's good for money laundering and buying drugs, right? I said, literally the worst way you could possibly do that, okay? It's pseudonymous, not anonymous. So there's a paper trail, right? It's digital, so it's not necessarily paper. I guess I should change my verbiage, but there's a trail. The best way to do any of that stuff is good old-fashioned cash. What we can do now is say, hey, I can move money and I can send it to the Ukraine via QR code right into somebody's wallet where it's needed. The Red Cross raised $500 billion to build houses after the earthquake. Do you know how many houses they built? 5. Not 100, I'm not pausing for effect here. It's like 5, it's less than 10. We can make sure that help gets where it needs to go, whether that's help with money, help with school, help with building a house and shelter, the basics. That's what blockchain does, because when you take all the pieces that existed, this is not a new creation, it's just a new recipe. We took some of cryptography, we took some of software, we took some of hardware, we took some of the interesting pieces and sort of put them together. 9 pages to change the world, the white paper. How many of you guys have read the white paper, out of curiosity? If you haven't had a chance, it's not really technical. It's not super difficult. Check it out, because when you read it and you really slow down and think about what it does, and you go, holy cow, I don't have to trust a politician to do what they say they're going to do, because I can commit them to a smart contract. So if then is not met, it doesn't happen. I just love the fact that we can empower each and every one of you to do whatever you want with whatever you have in any way that you create. That changes things. This is not tiny. This is changing lives, and I love it. Retire at 23. I mean, clap. That's crazy. That's the kind of stuff we can do.
All right, Dana. Let's see.
I'm adding to that?
If you want to, you don't have to.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. So personally, what I think is really cool about blockchain, and I do love all the cryptocurrency stuff, and I think self-sovereign identity is one of the best parts of it. But I think the blockchain technology itself is what is most applicable to businesses. It will literally touch every single business that you are in or you can think of being in. You can track anything on a blockchain. I mean, to know exactly where your stuff is coming from is wild. To know what farm the turkey you're eating for Thanksgiving is coming from, you can see the farmer who raised it, you can see all of that information. If you're buying a Chanel bag, you can know that it's not fake. And if I paid, $7,000 for a bag, I want to make sure it's not fake. So to be able to track all the way back to the seamstress who dyed a fabric that was used on the chain of the bag itself, all the way to which trucking company it took that bag and dropped it off at the Chanel store, that's amazing that you can do all that stuff. And you can see any of it. So this is really applicable to absolutely everybody. Whether or not you want to get into the crypto side of things, the technology that's underlying is here forever. Like, it's never going to go away. And I think that's part of what's so cool in every industry that it touches. No matter what you do, whether you think this is related to you, it is. You might just not know it yet.
You will after the evening's over, though. After this hour, you will definitely know that.
That's why you're here.
Right. Nancy, I know you want to talk a little bit about staking. Why don't you explain to people what that is and why it's a better way to get a better return? Because I know you appreciate appreciation.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm very passionate about staking. I say I'm a staking activist because staking is basically when you're generating rewards for holding a cryptocurrency, right? Keyword holding. So it's mutually beneficial. It benefits the project because, they're incentivizing you to not sell, right? This is all based off of law of supply and demand. When there's X supply and X amount of people purchasing or investing into these projects, then, if everyone were to be selling off, price would be going down. Well, to incentivize people to not do that, they want to say, hey, how about you hold this for X amount of time, and we will actually be paying you rewards in that token or maybe another token. So I love staking because it's I think the most passive way of generating income. It's something that could be paying you, and the percentages can go anywhere from like 4%, which is super conservative, 200%, 800%, 1600%. These are numbers that we've never seen before. These are unconventional. So if something is paying me 16% a day, compound interest is one of the big secrets of the world. That's how the rich get richer, right? So that's why I'm a big fan of staking, and I believe that don't just be making more money off of line or on the blockchain, but also be staking it.
So essentially, you're parking your money, but the returns you're getting in traditional ways are minuscule. And what you're talking about here with parking your cryptocurrency, the rewards are far greater, right?
Yep.
That's excellent. Rafael, anything to add to that?
I mean, not really, except for the fact that there's really only one problem in terms of with the blockchain is its adoption. Right? The fact that some of you guys are unfamiliar and have not done this. Does everybody here have a credit card? This is the next iteration, right? We went cash to, fill in the number cash, check. Then we said, okay, checks aren't necessary. We got the number on the bottom, so we stamped that number onto a credit card. Now you can swipe it. Then we decided, hey, we can tap it. Well, if you can tap a card, you can tap a phone. Tap a phone, you put a wallet on there, it doesn't matter where the money's coming from. So if each and every one of you just did anything in blockchain, find a project that you like, research, just type in YouTube. The number of people who search in YouTube, what is a blockchain, is unreal. Because so many people are like, okay, look, I've heard about it enough. My mom asked me, she's like, Mijo, I don't know what a blockchain is. And I said, Mom, because I love you, I will not explain it to you. What you need to know is, behind a wall, there's a light switch. There's conduit, you don't care what the gauge of the wire is, you just need to know the light switch works. As more and more of you guys come on, it incentivizes different businesses. I've got partners here that work in different businesses to make it accessible for everybody. Micrographs, I'm gonna do the shout out thing because I'm supposed to, right? They're paying for my Red Bull, so, gotta do the thing. What it does is my grandma can go on and sell pocket squares on Etsy. When 15 years ago, developers were making millions of dollars to hard code HTML to build simple websites. Okay, when you can do drag and drop ease, when you don't have to go in and buy it on Dex and change your BTC to Anchor to Stake, some of these guys know what I'm talking about. We need to make it easier for people, and the way that we do that is because when each and every one of you guys gets involved in any way, shape, or form, you care about giving money to people and tracking where it goes when you donate, put it on chain. You can know exactly where it is. You can program the money that says, I only want it to affect kids on the south side of Chicago. Even if you live in California now, you can say, I want to affect it here. That's surgical. You want to be able to have a way to monetize your data in the same way that Jeff Bezos was able to put it into the air, okay? That money was made off of the data that we have of our buying habits, all of those things. If you guys do one or two things in blockchain, all of that is a step in the right direction. And when we do that, that's how you guys become empowered. Right? It was embarrassing when I started. I consider myself to be an averagely smart human, and I felt really dumb because I didn't get it. And there's a lot of people who have MBAs and PhDs that still don't understand blockchain, but if you take a second and you look and you say, wait a second, this is crazy. I don't have to trust anybody. I just trust math. Well, math hasn't failed any of us yet, right? You trust gravity, still gonna happen, even though you don't understand how it works. Get in the blockchain, do something, buy an NFT, stake something, put some money on Coinbase. I don't care if it's a non-custodial, not your keys, not your crypto, everyone. Just to clarify, for those of you guys that know, you're gonna have to learn how to be custodians of your own things, and it's interesting and it's fun because you can make it anything you want. That's, I think, what I would add, is you can carve out your own history.
That's really good. And you just brought up NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and I know people have heard about it. They heard, oh, so-and-so, this celebrity's doing that, or that athlete's doing this. Dana, why don't you give people an idea of what it really means, because I know there are people in here that are like, yeah, I know about it, but I don't know about it.
Okay, NFTs. We have two types, really. We have a one-off and we have a collection. So think of an NFT one-off as like a Picasso, right? I mean, really, Picasso paintings might look like any other painting, but for some reason they hold the value because it's Picasso. So we're willing to pay a lot of money to own a real Picasso painting. That's the same thing with a one-off NFT. It's if we've digitalized a Picasso painting. Versus a collection is more so like Pokemon cards, right? You want to get as many of them maybe as you can. Or they're all kind of the same, but a little bit different at the same time. They have similarities and things like that. And usually when someone drops a collection, there's like 10,000 of these NFTs. So Bored Apes Yacht Club is probably the most famous one. You can Google them, and it's a really good way to explain it, because it's just a ton of apes. And literally apes, and they're digital cartoon apes. And they all look kind of the same, but some of them have their tongue out, and some of them have their nose pierced, and other ones have pink hair. And based off of these different properties, we decide that they're more valuable than others. You know, if there was only one ape with pink hair, someone like me, who wears a lot of pink, might decide that that has a lot of value versus the one with orange hair. And then you get celebrities and you get people like that in there. right? And that's what really drives the prices up, if we're being honest. You know, people have a Bored Apes Yacht Club, and you're like, what does that really do for you? It's you own a digital piece of art. What does that do for you? You're not putting it on your wall like you are a Picasso painting. No, but you can make it your Twitter avatar if you want. And there's only one of them, so no one else can ever, ever, ever copy you. As the artist, if you were the one who created these things, you get royalties off of these NFTs. So every time that NFT is resold, just like a pair of shoes are resold or a Pokemon card is traded, you will make money off of it. So unlike in the real world, where if you sell something on eBay, if whoever bought it from you decides that they want to resell it later and the price goes up a ton, you wouldn't see any of that difference. But with an NFT, you're always collecting royalty rates, so everything is in the power of the artist, which is insane. Like, that's never been done in history before. And that's what makes it so cool. So what adds value? We as a group decide that something has value. I mean, just like Picasso. Suddenly we decided Picasso had value, right? Same with an NFT. Enough people come together and decide it's worth something, and it is. Some people do it because they love to collect. Other people do it because they think it's a way to invest and they hope that they can turn a profit on it. And some people might just do it because they're fascinated by the industry. You know, you can get tangible assets based off of an NFT, which is so cool. So if you bought an NFT, they have unlockable content that goes along with it. So you might only be able to get this one t-shirt from your favorite designer if you buy an NFT. So not only do you have the physical product, but you have the digital product to market it in the digital world, which goes along with the metaverse and the whole world that we're going into. It is so crazy, like it goes on forever and forever. But it's really cool because any interest that you have, whether it's art, it's fashion, it's music, you can buy all of them as NFTs. And not only are you making profits, but you're also giving the royalties where they belong to the artist.
So, all three of our panelists grew up in Chicago and the Chicago suburbs. Nancy spends most of her time in Miami. Rafael is in Minneapolis. And we were talking earlier about NFTs with, say, the Timberwolves. So Dana was just talking about NFTs in sort of a general sense. Can you talk more specifically about something that you're doing, like the Timberwolves are doing, and what it actually means specifically and why there's demand for that?
So I'm always the guy who gets touchy-feely because I want to get kids involved, I want to get poor people involved, I want to get everyone involved, because I just think that, in the same way that electricity and clean water and food are kind of valuable, I feel like if you can be in charge of your own future and mitigate your own risk, you don't have to be relying on anyone else. What we're doing is, I work a lot with the government side and the policy side because in the United States we have no clarity in terms of what is happening in this, and a lot of these projects that we're talking about are based overseas because of the fact that the US doesn't have a position. So what we do is we go into the schools and we say, hey, how do we build the knowledge base for people to recognize that there's new jobs coming, right? When we invented the steam engine and we were able to leverage people's strength, we made ourselves far more productive. And the grandparents realized that their kids and their grandkids were probably going to have a different job. What's happening now is there are jobs that are available today that will not be available in 10 years because they will be code-based. So kids are like, okay, well, what do I do if I thought I could be a lawyer, or a doctor, or some of these other things that was a good living? Right? You don't need to make 6 figures to have a good living. You can run a Discord channel and make $30, $40, $50, $60,000 a year, and that's not including what you would get paid in token. These kids are digitally native. They understand what's happening. So we went to these schools and we said, hey, we're going to do a partnership with Gary Vaynerchuk for VCon. He has a huge NFT. He has a 40-year roadmap on how to make them valuable, because utility is really what we talk about in a lot of stuff. Art has utility because it's valuable to a community. When we told these students what we were doing, and we went in and we're these adults and we know what we're talking about, all of a sudden they jump in and we're like, okay, they're better than us. This is not supposed to happen this quickly. But my 2-year-old can run an iPad better than my grandmother because she's familiar with it. She's done it longer. It's more muscle memory. When we can teach kids that, hey, you can be and insert whatever it is you're passionate about. Do you want to write? Run somebody's Twitter channel. Run somebody's community page. And so when we built these NFTs for athletes, these kids were looking up to them, and these athletes let them use their social cred to build something valuable around them, and those smart contracts that we built now will say that the students who invested and created in this, as that gains value, that money goes back to those creators who are teenagers. I don't know about you guys, I work with coders who are 14, 15, 16 years old that are making 6 figures a year. You know why? Because they've spent, I read the numbers, people have spent 10 million years on Fortnite. That's a lot of time in a digital space. They're making friends in foreign countries. You know, there's kids who are more aware of what's going on in the Ukraine and Russia than we are because they can talk on their headset, on their Xbox or their PlayStation to somebody who lives there that they used to play Call of Duty with or something like that. It's a digital planet. It doesn't matter what your country boundaries are. There's no boundaries. You have internet, no more boundaries. So when we can show kids, hey, you want to create art, you want to create music. 35 years ago, you got a song that was a platinum, played 1 million, you made $37,000. Right now on Spotify, you get 1 million plays, you make 35. Okay, that difference in what's being raised at $1 a song is going to somebody, it's not going to the creators. We can get these kids to be making, you know, if you have 1,000 people paying you $100 a year to create your art or your music or your comedy or your jokes, that's $100 grand a year. There's a really good essay called 1,000 True Fans. And it talks about how when we can let people do this in a small curated way, it becomes far more valuable, and blockchain makes that just that much easier.
There you go. Quick primer on NFTs. The topic of our discussion, as you all know, is blockchain for business. And so I'm sure individually you all are interested to hear how you can benefit from it. But as business people, you may be wondering, how does this fit in for whatever career I've chosen? So Nancy, I want to ask you first, how can people leverage blockchain for their business interests, and what's possible?
Wow, okay. I think we talked a little bit about it, but almost anything is possible. we can get as creative as we want. Like Rafael said, there's opportunities, there's career paths that just didn't exist before, like being a Discord moderator or being, you know, the person that handles the Twitter accounts, things like that. So honestly, like, to say the sky's the limit is not even true because we can go so much further beyond that. But when it comes to blockchain, I think it's up to us to get as creative as we want with how do we want to implement this, because like how Dana said, right now it's optional, right? You know, a few years from now, who knows how many, but I don't think it will be, because we want transparency. The people want to know what's going on behind closed doors. We want to know who's handling our goods and things like that. So specifically with NFTs, because I'm a big fan, I think we can incorporate that into our small businesses. If we have a clothing line, if we have a restaurant, you know, we can create memberships, we can incentivize our people. When people are invested into our company, they are incentivized to watch us thrive. They will talk about it. They will continue to support it. They will post about it. It will continue to grow, because what's the best way to have someone, how did we all get here? Word of mouth, right? Like somebody shared it somewhere, and now we're all here networking. So same thing, when you believe in a project and you're invested into it, emotionally and monetarily, you want to see it thrive. So people become emotionally and financially invested. And then we have groups like the Board Ape Clubs, Stone Ape Clubs for Solana Network, things like that, that they come together, and well, that network, I feel like they can move mountains. they have the influence and the affluence to do so. So that's just one example, and they're doing it, and I think that's, I don't know, I feel like that might be like that. I feel like we're in the AOL stage of the internet still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 1996.
Yes.
You made that great point.
Let me ask you that, Dana, a little bit different way, because it's whatever you can imagine. So people are in, I bet a lot of people in this room are in traditional careers, traditional forms of business. So they're thinking, how can this be relevant to me?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take the healthcare industry, for example. How annoying is it that every single time you go to a doctor, you have to give them all of your information? Like, how do they not have that by now, right? How do they not know the prescriptions that you take? You were just there 2 months ago, and they prescribed it to you. Things like that, you know, that kind of information, there's so much disconnect. So if we had all that on a blockchain, everyone with the permissions that we give them to certain providers, you know, would have access to that. So this is great for a million reasons. It's great as a consumer because number one, we don't have to answer the 5,000 questions they ask us when we go check in for the doctor. But two, it's really good for your provider to know because they'll know that if you saw a doctor when you were on vacation in California and that doctor prescribed you some medication, they're gonna know that that happened. And they're not going to prescribe you something that will interact with that. They're not going to give you information that doesn't include that. You know, all of that information is gonna be there, and you know that it's valuable and it's trustworthy. So that can apply really to any industry that you're in. You know, anything where you're collecting data or you want data to go from one party to another, whether that's research or that's education or that's, you know, financial statements, any of that stuff. Putting it on a blockchain just makes that process seamless and automatic. It also saves a lot of money. Then you don't have to be processing all that paperwork back and forth. So I think that's one of the really big ways. And also for traditional industries, you know, the transparency and the anti-fraud purposes. You know, if you are in an industry like the wine industry, for example, or food or, you know, fashion, whatever, something like that. The wine industry, it's insane how much fraud there is. Like 30% of all wines are fraudulent. People will literally open up a bottle of a 1996 Burgundy, pour out a little bit of it and fill it up with water, and they'll resell it for thousands and thousands of dollars, and we would have no idea. People have perfect palates. I mean, they can mess with anything, right? But if we tracked all out on a blockchain, we would know exactly when that cork was popped, and we would know exactly when it went back in, we would know whose hands it's in, and everything like that. I think that is the stuff that traditional businesses can really use. You know, if you have products, then you want to make sure that they're not fraudulent, people aren't copying you, people aren't reselling your technology, whatever it may be. All that stuff can be tracked on a blockchain automatically, securely, and transparently.
That's a great segue to what I wanted to get to because she just talked about two industries, healthcare and food and beverage, where you could really use that. How many people are in the legal industry, just by a show of hands in the room right now? Do we have any people in the legal industry? Yes, 1, 2. So I know Rafael wanted to take advantage of this little exercise. So we've already talked about healthcare, we've talked about food and beverage, but for somebody in the legal industry and you're thinking, well, how is this going to be relevant to me? He's the man of 1,000 use cases, and he will now give you some good advice and best practices about how it can be relevant to you in your industry.
So computers are really only ideation machines, right? They can run things over and over again at light speed. They're better at, in the medical industry, radiologists, AI is better at diagnosing cancer because it can recognize patterns faster. In the legal industry, you're looking at if and then statements when you write a contract, right? If I spend this money and I verify the title, I transact, I can receive it, now I'm the ownership of this, right? None of that changed in reality. You didn't get nobody got a paper title or deed for their house, right? It went from one server to another server. You didn't get a check for 500, well, you might have gotten a check for 500 grand, but you didn't get a duffel bag full of cash. It was ones and zeros that went from one ledger to the other. They've actually done studies where they've taken, sorry lawyers, they've actually done studies where they've taken lawyers and they put them against AI to read contracts, and they were able to find faster and cheaper. I know what some of you guys charge per hour, whether it's AI, machine learning, big data. We can process this in a way that makes sure that any stakeholder is remunerated because they've been inputting the right inputs. That, for every industry, if you can track where your wine comes from or your supply chain, Walmart was a great example. Walmart uses blockchain at scale. Okay, they were the first large company to do so. And the CEO of Walmart came in and threw a container of mangoes on the table and he said, this has got E. coli in it. How fast can we find this exact lot in every store and recall it? And his team went in and it took him 6 days to find the lot. They did the same exercise with blockchain. It took 2 minutes. Okay, that's people's lives, right? We recall bad spinach. Somebody gets sick, they die. 200,000 people a year die from interaction from medicine that they are prescribed. It is not from abuse. It's from complications because the doctor doesn't know what they're on because some people are working multiple doctors. If we had blockchain, a doctor would notice that, hey, somebody's getting their Percocet or their Vicodin over here, and so you've already hit your limit. This is to not only protect us, but it gives us massive amounts of data to get that research and have much better algorithms in the future.
That is fascinating, and I think you can all start to see the different uses. Let me get one, what I want to do is talk about one more industry and have them weigh in on it, and then we're going to get you all to ask questions, the questions you want answered by them the last 15 or so minutes. So give me another industry. Just yell it out. Real estate. Real estate. Who wants? You want to handle this? Do you want to? Not you. Okay. You want to take it?
Sure, yeah. Well, kind of actually, smart contracts are a massive part of the real estate industry. So, I mean, if you were going through the closing process on a house, there's a million things that could go wrong and do go wrong. And homeowners who have had that happen can tell you it's a pain. So if you had a smart contract where it's all written out, where it's like, if this house doesn't pass this inspection, and this person doesn't sell this property beforehand, and this mortgage doesn't go through, and all that stuff is written into a contract that's automatically executed, then the house is never gonna sell. Or you're not gonna get a buyer who will default on their loan. Things like that, all that stuff is tracked, it's automatically going to happen. And there's not gonna be any missing steps because there's no intermediaries, there's no one in between that's going to, forget to put in one piece of paperwork or do a background check on their inspector and things like that. So I feel like in real estate and, for commercial, or for personal real estate, that's really helpful. The smart contract aspect would be probably my biggest draw, I think, if I was in the real estate industry. Does anyone have anything to add to that?
Title companies? Yes.
I'll just second an industry, cannabis.
Cannabis. Cool.
Okay, I'm gonna let you take this one, Mr. 1,000 Uses. Tony P, among other things, has some interest, as do many people in this room, in cannabis. Yeah.
The coolest thing about blockchain is if you want to give someone access to the data, you can. Right? So I was a formerly licensed banker. I had my 63, so I can't exactly work in certain places where I can pretend I didn't know the rules. Cannabis is great because people are afraid that, we're not going to be able to see who is selling what, and state by state it's different, right? Some states have THC laws that are allowed for medical research or for, thank God Illinois is a recreational. I'm hitting the dispensary before I go home. We got to go the right direction because honestly, people should have their own choice, right? We're adults. You guys can make your own decisions. You all made it here. You drove safe. There's things that we can do on our own. What we can do now is we can take businesses that operated in the gray area, and when somebody comes in, like a Alphabet Soup ATF or someone like that to verify your business, you can say, oh, no problem. And then digitally, you could open your books and say, here's everything that we have. Here's every pound or every seed. They track down to the seed. And you can show, hey, we're not doing anything wrong. When you can show the government that's assuming you're doing nefarious things, because obviously only people do bad stuff, not governments, when you can show them, hey, look, I can show you all my cards, and then as soon as they're done looking, you shut it down, that permission piece, you can take industries that were on the fringe and bring them into mainstream. Now you can tax them. You can do things like a carbon tax for large businesses and track that. Any business where it's like, maybe we're doing something wrong, no, here, take a look at my cards. That's what blockchain does. That's cool. You don't have to be worried like, oh, they're gonna shut my business down? No, they come in and say, hey, we gotta look at your, okay, boop, take a look. You see what you need? You can run an Excel spreadsheet out there, pull a pivot table, pull all the things, see where the money goes. If you can track and trace everything, you don't have to worry about, unless you are operating in the gray area, you don't have to worry about it anymore. That's cool. You can run your business in a way that you couldn't before because you thought you were possibly teetering on the edge.
I was actually just going to add from the user side, if you were, from the user perspective. If you were a user, don't you want to know that what you're buying is pure? Especially in today's day and age, stuff is mixed, and you don't want to be buying that. So if everything, the supply chain is tracked, and that also goes for, pharmaceutical drugs and things like that too. Like we get synthetic drugs made all the time, and that's terrifying to think about that you don't actually know what you're consuming, especially when it comes to things like that. So I think from the consumer side, blockchain is so cool because they can't, no one can lie to you about what was in there, and there's no mess ups that something was accidentally mixed or laced when it wasn't supposed to be. You know exactly what you're getting every time.
Excellent, great insight. So let's get a few questions here, and the closer you are, the better. This is great. Tell us what your name is and who the question is for, and anybody can jump in. If it's for somebody and you have a thought, please share it with us.
Hey, I'm Steve. I actually reached out to Rafael on LinkedIn the other day, but I just started in the blockchain Web3. I work for a startup called Token. We applying Web3 and blockchain towards the live event industry. But how I got into it was very interesting. I had a side hustle. I'm an entrepreneur. I started taking my money and I just started investing in I just put my money in. It just went up, and I got to a point where I was like, you know what, I really want to dive into this. But you have a room full of people that don't necessarily have that luxury of being able to just dive into this field. And what are the 1, 2, 3 things that they could do that they can apply to their industry, to their company now to move them towards that, right? So that it's not so drastic, because not everybody can take that leap. Like, what do you think that they can do?
Nancy, you want to try that?
Okay, so I think a few things that people can do is, of course, continue to learn more about it. I will, however, say that I think that you learn more in the field than you do in the classroom. So just get in there, just kind of how you did. You invested at the right time, at the right place, but more importantly, you executed. So without that execution, we cannot learn, at least not by experience. We can learn theory. So I think that's all I would say is just, we have Google, we have YouTube, we have a room full of people tonight that, know their ins and outs about blockchain technology, crypto investing, things like that. So definitely network and just continue to learn more about the space and continue to ask questions. I think there's no such thing as a silly question, but more than anything, just execution. Just get in there, you learn more in the field than you do in the classroom.
Just be willing to look stupid. Get uncomfortable. Right? Cognitive dissonance sucks. Push through it. Ask somebody like, look, bro, I can't tell you how many people I've had who have PhDs, MBAs, JDs, whatever, and they're like, dude, I don't understand your Ponzi scheme. And I was like, all right, it's a little bit hurtful, but be willing to ask questions like, I don't understand, because everybody started somewhere, right? Education is one of the things that allows us to be able to empower ourselves to recognize whether something is a scam or is real. If you want to start in the investing side and do crypto, you can do that. If you like, hey, I want to support local musicians, you can do that. And now you can actually, almost in a sponsorship type style, if you want Kentucky bluegrass heavy metal music, you can buy these songs from these people in a way that the money doesn't go to YouTube, doesn't go to Instagram. You can go in and you can buy a piece of art for $1 on OpenSea. You can go to Coinbase, you can download the app. You can go to MetaMask and open a wallet. Take $100, put it in one of the majors, Bitcoin or Ethereum, park it and wait. In 6 months, go back and look. Wait, don't do that 6 months ago, but now, where we are, go back 6 months from now, and if that doesn't look different, I'm pretty sure we'll be inspired by then. But just jump in. $50, $100, $10. Send money to a charity that uses blockchain. Type in blockchain charities and support somebody in Ukraine or Russia. Do anything you want, whatever you're passionate about. There's a blockchain project in it, I promise. And if you don't know one, I do.
I'm going to add to that. You mentioned the timing. So current market price action is beautiful. You are getting in at a huge discount. It is Black Friday on the market, so now's a good time to make your mistakes. Not saying that there will be, that those are guaranteed, but you guys are getting in at better positions than I am. So congratulations, you already won.
Also, find someone that you can relate to in the space. I think that is one of my biggest tips. It's confusing, and the language that these things are written in can be really hard to understand. If you look up like IBM's blockchain guide for dummies, it's not for dummies. You will need a dictionary to understand the first sentence alone. So find people that are in this space, because there's tons, whether you learn better visually from YouTube video cartoons or you like podcasts and you want real world examples, find someone that is more relatable to you because they will make it less scary. I think that people are really scared by blockchain and by all these different buzzwords. So if you find someone that can take it to the level you need it and bring your interest into it, whether that's sports, that's luxury dining, or your personal business, I think that will make you more motivated to actually learn about it.
To timestamp, there is an NFT container where it was used, and now all of a sudden, rather than having to say, okay, our lawyers are going to go up against your lawyers, it becomes black and white and cut and dry. They're using that to actually tokenize intellectual property on things like research and pharmaceuticals, because of the fact that there's the clarity now that there used to be. It was much more obscure in the past. When it's on chain and there's a date and a time, all you have to do is go back and say, sorry, bro, you were Thursday, he was Tuesday. This wins this. We don't even have to go to court. See you later. What's for lunch?
Excellent. Okay, you are in the front row and you had your hand up twice. Go ahead.
Last one.
All right, so I'm sure I'm speaking for others here as well, but my business doesn't have a particular deliverables, whether that's a physical or a digital product. It's more of a hybrid coaching, consulting. How can I leverage the blockchain?
Okay, so how we were mentioning, NFTs could be in different kinds of. It could be a profile picture. It could be a just considered a JPEG. It could be a membership. So your consulting could be turned into a membership, but on the blockchain, sold as an NFT, and then it could be anytime that it's transferred, sold, resold, whatever the case may be, the consulting company gets the royalties. Pretty simple.
I mean, yeah, actually going off that and NFTs, I mean, you could create a coaching NFT where only people who buy the NFT have access to your coaching, abilities or whatever it may be for that case. And if they sell it, they no longer have access to your courses and things like that, or however you have it set up. I feel like that's one of the ways, if it's not a traditional tangible asset, but it's something like that, maybe a membership is an option for you. Or even just, you could streamline your business processes on the blockchain. It doesn't necessarily have to be for your actual service line, but it could be like how you run your business in general, how you do your HR or whatever it may be. You can do any of that stuff on a blockchain. It doesn't just have to necessarily apply to what you're putting out there.
Thank you all so much. Great questions, great insight from our panel. Please give a big round of applause to Dana, Nancy, and Rafael. This has been terrific. You all have been a very attentive audience, and we appreciate you all being here. And I know that Tony and Greg have a few little things on the back end that they want to talk about, but thanks to everybody for spending time with us and sharing your wisdom with a lot of us. Some people in the audience are well-versed, some others of us aren't, but I think we all came out of it knowing a lot more tonight, so thank you all very much.